Well, welcome back to another week's analysis behind the news. We're going to do something very different today. We're not going to talk about the news. We're going to talk about a propaganda campaign that is going out through the entire conservative movement like a prairie fire. And it concerns the Constitutional Convention movement. The John Birch Society has been involved for years, the linchpin, if you will, of getting rid of Constitutional Convention calls in state after state across the country. Because in that, we see a very dangerous thing happening due to the precedences of constitutional conventions. First of all, most people don't understand that there have been two constitutional conventions, not one. You only hear about the one because that's the one back in when we got our original Constitution of the United States of America. It was secret. It was held in secret. In fact, the very famous lady, or statement of the lady that came up to Ben Franklin after the convention was over, she says, "What have you given us, sir?" She asked the question because she didn't know. Nobody knew. He said, "A republic, ma'am, if you can keep it." And the second one was in secret too. And while you might not say that has to do with the United States, it certainly had to do with the Confederacy of the United States of America. A constitutional convention was called in Montgomery, Alabama. It too was held in secret. They even took a vote whether or not to allow reporters or even take minutes. And the vote was no. So nobody knew what they had done until they made it public. So there is a precedence in the United States to hold these things in secret. That's just the beginning of the process. There's a new book going around that everybody is touting here and using as the Bible, if you will, of this new thrust towards a constitutional convention. It's by Mark Levin, and it's called The Liberty Amendments, subtitle, Restoring the American Republic. Well, we in the John Birch Society believe in restoring the Republic by adhering to the existing Constitution. Nobody's paying any attention to it. Men and women stand and take an oath to the Constitution and not read it. This is bad. People don't listen to it in Congress. They pass bills and do things that are unconstitutional. And the Supreme Court rules on things as if they're constitutional when they are not. And certainly, the President of the United States does unconstitutional things, and it is not stopped by the Supreme Court or the Congress. Now, if people are ignoring the Constitution now, the law of the land, what makes anyone believe that if they have a new Constitution or new amendments to solve problems, that Congress, the President, the Supreme Court, the Army, etc., will listen to these new things? If they want something here and they violate the Constitution to do it, passing an amendment there, will that stop them? Not under the current conditions. Because the problem is not with whether Congress is adhering to the Constitution or the President or the Supreme Court. It's that the electorate itself, the American voter, is not paying attention to it, not understanding the value of it, not understanding the need to force our politicians to do something about the things that are wrong within the constitutional framework. Until the American voter understands that, nothing that you can do will change the morass that we're in. It's not going to happen. There is no solution that can be forthcoming without the understanding and education of the American electorate, because they've got to be behind it. And so passing a new amendment for a balanced budget or whatever you want to do is not going to work. In fact, some of these amendments are a joke. But the thing is that the problem is so overwhelming, and that's the thing in this book. It shows such an overwhelming problem. We've got to do something. And the something is a constitutional convention, or what other name you want to put on it, to pass a whole series of new amendments. Some of these amendments, by the way, in here are very sloppy. One thing that is very startling is that in the Constitution, of the United States. It says that 2/3 of the states may call for a constitutional convention, but that 3/4 of the states must ratify whatever comes out of that. And yet he proposes an amendment that says only 2/3 need to ratify. He actually lowers the bar in this solution that he advocates to affect change, to affect a solution or solutions. So it makes it easier to get something passed. When you're talking about changes, fundamental changes in law, you want to raise the bar in order to change things, because people can get carried away in the heat of the moment, if you will, and do things with a simple majority. 60% is not that many, really, when you come right down to it. But let's keep in mind something else, that the Articles of Confederation, the original document that put these United States together, it called for a unanimous agreement, a unanimous ratification by all 13 states in order to make any change in the Articles of Confederation. This secret conclave that turned out a very good document, don't get me wrong, nonetheless did something that lowered the bar from unanimous to 3/4. And so this presented a problem for some of the states. They didn't want the Constitution. If 9 states out of the 13 could ratify a law which is imposed on all 13 states, that's kind of a problem that our forefathers, when they drew up the Articles of Confederation, didn't think much of. Were there weaknesses in the Articles of Confederation? Obviously there were. Otherwise they wouldn't have called a convention to amend it. But instead they formed a whole new document, created a whole new way of ratifying it, and then laid it out there. 9 states ratified, and then what about the rest of them that were left? Rhode Island particularly. Rhode Island had made up its mind that it was not going to ratify the Constitution for whatever reasons they had at the time. But there they are, all alone. 12 other states have ratified it. What are they going to do? Stand alone? Create their own government relative to being an independent country? Go it alone in an ugly world? They decided not to, and then ratified the Constitution as a result. But they didn't want to. And so we see that lowering of the bar constantly in regard to changes and debates concerning law and that sort of thing, creeping into Congress and the debate on whether or not we should have new amendments. Yes, the problem is acute. Yes, the problem is widespread. And yes, the problem is deep. But nobody is listening to the solution, which is right here. All they have to do is obey the Constitution of the United States. They don't need another convention and a series of amendments. They discovered years ago that they could not get the Equal Rights Amendment passed through a constitutional convention, because we saw A, it was a constitutional convention, and B, the Equal Rights Amendment was very harmful. And so when the conservative forces united and defeated that move, a tremendous initiative, we were able to defeat it. They realized from now on they have to fool the American conservatives into thinking that something is for their good. And so we're going to have no anti-flag burning. We're going to have pro-life. We're going to have balanced budget, any number of different amendments. But always at the bottom of the whereases is the therefore, and that therefore says we call a constitutional convention to do it. We said time out, that's bad. Don't do that. And so now what they're trying to do is put a lot of money, a lot of effort, and a very well orchestrated campaign behind this book to promote the idea of the problem being so huge, we've got to do something about it, and that something is a constitutional convention. Beware of it. It is dangerous. It's one of the reasons, by the way, that we witness in this campaign why the John Birch Society is not really enamored with a lot of these major talk show people and conservative politicians. They don't seem to do their homework very well, and they're all taken up because of a new book. Watch for it. We recommend that you read it, by the way, because hopefully you'll be able to see through some of these weaknesses as you do so. But beware of the Article 5 Constitutional Convention. It's dangerous. Until next week, we'll see you then.